Prime Minister's first comments there, talking about defense exports being at a all-time global high, and then a keen emphasis on the making India a manufacturing hub. So some of the key comments there as far as the Prime Minister are concerned. We have our panel with us right now. I can see Keshav Bhajanka there, but first I'd like to go across to Shubhrakant Panda, former president of CII. I can also see Sanjay Nair. Sanjay, hi. Okay, we lost his audio. Salvador is with us. Salvador Babons is with us. He's joining us from the US today. And Rajiv Memani is with us. Rajiv Memani, as we all know, is the chairperson of 𝑒𝑛𝑦. So, and Ratun Lahiri continues to be with us. I think I've done my initial introductions. Have I missed anyone there? No, I think I'm good. So just to go to you first, Shubhrakant, we've had the first round of responses. We've had about an hour to analyze what this budget has been about, right? And to get a broad message. What's the message you get?
Good afternoon, Arnab. I think this is clearly a growth-oriented budget where there is an element of continuity, there is an element of inclusivity, and all of this while sticking to fiscal discipline, which is what lends credibility to the whole exercise. So from a manufacturing sector, I think there is much to look forward to, because the specific mention of promoting domestic manufacturing or promoting export competitiveness, I think these are very important points, because this is a sector which has to do very well for India to continue and indeed step up its growth trajectory. And I think in that regard, the measures particularly taken for MSMEs, which is the new credit guarantee scheme, as well as the reduction in threshold for TREDS, which is something that Vicky had been suggesting, these are good measures. Of course, the focus on employment generation, whether it is for first-timers or schemes to promote employment in manufacturing sector and other sectors, all of these broadly the 9 priority areas which have been, I think, elaborated very extensively in this budget, not only lays the vision for this year's budget, but indeed the vision for this government for the next 4 years as well, and something that lays the foundation for a step change in India's growth going ahead.
Absolutely. I think Sanjay Nair, I've got your audio through. Sanjay, can you hear me?
Hi.
Hi, Sanjay.
I can. Hi. How are you?
Yeah. Hi, Sanjay. Sanjay, of course, has been such a dominant figure in the Indian landscape of investing. He knows it through and through. He understands the way the global markets react to things like this. Sanjay, from your perspective, does this make us a more attractive investment hub? How do you see the world looking at India? How do you see investments pan out, given the numbers that have been promised in this budget?
Yeah, I think, Anna, thanks. I think firstly, from a global perspective, just looking outward in, it's a bold budget put by this government when they could have been far more populist and far more easy in terms of giving away freebies and a consumption stimulus. They've taken a long, arduous route of really focusing on manufacturing, MSMEs, bridging the skilling gap. So at a very macro level, they've taken the tougher path, but I think it leads to longer term, if it works, and if it's executed well, it leads to longer term sustainable manufacturing, disposable income, and hence consumption, right? So that is, I think, one very big takeaway. Second takeaway is, managing the fiscal downwards, 20 basis points, unexpected. 4.9 going to 4.5 is a very positive message, I can tell you, for foreign and local investors. It will all hopefully play out in the next few days. But when you start to crowd out, when you start to crowd out less the private savings, it all comes towards the real markets, and that's when I think the private savings get crowded in. And thirdly, you've got to crowd in the private capex, and we're seeing a lot of initiatives they have promised in urban development, on the side of green technology, and you really have a crowd in the private capex as well. And balance sheets are pretty under-leveraged, so the Indians have to respond to that, and I think the foreigners will follow. But policy continuity, prudent fiscal management, and a longer-term view on creating consumption through sustainable income, through manufacturing and employment. I think that is the key message. And therefore, it's a bold budget from their point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. Also joining us, I think from the CII, I think I have the audio through Arvind Goyal, who is the chairman of the Tata Autocom Systems Limited. Arvind, sorry to keep you waiting. Your first reactions to the budget?
A very positive and growth-oriented budget. Certainly, a lot of help to the MSMEs, which are suppliers to the large manufacturing companies. So it is also beneficial to them. And also reduction of no duty on so many minerals will help the new energy companies, telecom companies, which are large sectors. And once they grow, there is a growth in the MSMEs which will also come, and this will also help on the sustainability journey of the country. So overall, a good initiative on this budget.
Absolutely. I'd like to spend a couple of moments on China, and first for an independent view on China, I'll go to Keshav. Keshav is, of course, is running a Century, one of the sort of growing Indian companies, and also with a strong export focus and expanding into global markets. Did you really see this budget? Do you see India sort of indicating a shift in manufacturing focus with China in mind? Did you see the China factor spread out over the budget somewhere?
I think it is a very good and a very holistic budget. It's balanced because the focus on long-term capital expenditure continues. But at the same time, in the short term, there are a number of steps the government has taken that are focused on employment and employment generation, which is going to benefit us all. If you look at the housing sector, the focus on the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, that is going to be a very big thrust to industries such as ours, which are real estate dependent. Overall, I think this China plus one narrative that has been going on has led to a lot of benefit for India. And considering a budget as strong as this, I think India is going to be very, very well poised to take advantage of the global macroeconomic scenario where everybody else seems to be in trouble, but our economy seems to be doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to go to Sanjay Nair again. Sanjay, I want to focus on this aspect a little bit more with you. Are we overreacting? Are we overeating? For example, I saw a lot of focus on solar today. And the announcements were all, as you noticed, Sanjay, in succession. Energy transition, very, very critical to fight climate change. And China is roughly accounting for 80% of global solar exports. So, and mainland China was shipping billions of dollars of solar panels to India. So is this a targeted encouragement to our own sectors in these areas? Do you see that or any of the other announcements, for example, to remove the BCD on ferronickel and blister copper? And there also, China had exported 94 metric tons of steel and copper around the world. So these are all focus areas for China. They are getting very specific focus in our budget. Are we overeating this? What do you think?
Yeah.
Plastic.
I think you're overeating it a little bit, Arnab. Maybe some of these things are to reduce the dependence on China in terms of the supply side, but I think it's more to do with what we should have done earlier, which is to get our manufacturing in order and got to be much more self-dependent and self-independent from the world at large, like we saw in the pharma sector. So I think it's high time that we corrected the duty structures and we made sure that we can encourage local manufacturing, and all these areas you mentioned make a lot of sense. So if there happens to be a message on China, that's fine, that's so be it, but I don't think it's targeted only from that perspective. We just need to get our own manufacturing and our own dependence in order, increased, enhanced, to make in India for India and for exports. So I think that's the real message here. Also, Mr. Panda, there has been this industry demand that we should increase visas for the Chinese engineers. So, in a way, an oblique admission that we ultimately depend on China, even if we have to manufacture in India. There was also very innovative. Mr. Panda, are you getting me? My question is to you, which is that amidst all this China focus, we have seen this industry demand of requesting the government to increase number of visas issued to Chinese engineers, for example, because even if we have to manufacture in India, we need those Chinese engineers to come in and skill our workers here. Couple that with all these measures that seem to be aimed at shifting, manufacturing from China to India, you think these measures are enough, or sort of like a halfway house, the government could have done more?
So, basically what you're doing is you're taking two or three issues and you're conflating them. One is, of course, the opportunity available to India from a manufacturing perspective, where we're looking at China plus one. And that involves a slew of measures which we have done over the last several years and need to do more of, which is to enhance the ease of doing business, to reduce the cost of doing business. And in fact, in this budget, there is reference to broadening and deepening the reforms agenda, with the center working with the states to improve productivity of factors of production, for example. So that is one aspect of it. The second aspect, when you talk about specific visas and things like that, those relate to the fact that there are, unquestionably ongoing projects and things like that where, experts may need to come in. And if you look at the personal electronics manufacturing space, there is still, some degree of linkages with China. So these are two different issues which I don't think should be conflated. What we definitely need to focus on and look at is, how India can garner a larger share of trade, how India can garner a larger share of investments from global corporations which are looking to diversify their manufacturing base. I think lots has been done, lots more can be done and needs to be done. And what you saw in this year's budget is a clear vision articulating how we will go about implementing that, so that India's journey, as I keep on saying, we have done well in terms of growth, but I think the stars are aligning for a step change going ahead, which is what is also essential for us to become a developed nation and to grab the opportunities which come our way.
Sanjay Nair, coming to you, we can clearly see that this being the first budget of Modi 3.0, the effort here is to be consolidating the economy from the point of view of jobs, from the point of view of building in all the positives, so that the next couple of budgets can really build on from here. Your comments, sir, do you think this is step one to more serious things and more accelerated growth coming in future?
I think if you get this year right in terms of both the fiscal target that they have put and the correction of the custom duty structure and all that, I think the next year onwards, if the Income Tax Act review is complete, if the the depenalization, decriminalization, and all the other simplifications they have promised this time on the SME, 1 year is a lot. And this government, as you know, executes pretty fast, pretty efficiently. If that can be demonstrated in the next 10 to 11 months, I think that's when their levers for doing more reforms improves dramatically from the year on. And I think that's when you begin to see sustainable growth and a sustainably downward gliding path, total debt. Remember, it's not the deficit. We have to bring the total debt down as well. So look, I think if you get this year right, simplification, ease of doing business, crowd in private capex, crowd in private savings, I think the FDI begins to come after that, and that's when your saving investment gap begins to close, and you get a virtuous cycle of real GDP growth touching 7.5, 8 on a sustainable basis. That's what we need to get to, and I think that is what this budget sets by getting manufacturing in India get started, MSMEs crowded in, simplify things, and hopefully 11 months we're in a very good place to get to the next level.
Absolutely. I must say thank you very much, Sanjay, and and Suprikant Panda for joining us there from Associam and FICCI. One point on my side, and I'll carry it on with the others. I think the investment of a VC fund for 1,000 crores for the space economy, I'm reading the fine print, is just too little. Given the fact that there is so much that can be done, you could probably make it at least 10 times larger. Your startups in space who are doing extremely well, but to put 1,000 crores in that area is absolutely nothing. I want to go back to the global picture. I want to go back to Ratun, but before that, Niranjan, your question to Salvatore. Let's open it up.
Okay, Salvatore is an associate professor at the University of Sydney. He has research interest in globalization development.
And a keen interest in India.
So how are you reading the Modi budget in his third term, Salvatore?
I think the budget has responded to the economic survey data. The budget speech, of course, is in Hindi, and apologies I don't speak Hindi, but the economic survey data is extraordinarily positive. Even the things that you might think don't look positive maybe are. So, for example, inflation is down, but food prices are up. Well, if you view that from the standpoint of helping farmers, then food prices being up is actually a net positive for India as long as those higher prices trickle through to the farm door. Because what India needs most of all is higher farm incomes. The big priority for India right now is to manage that shift from farm to city. India still has 45% labor force engaged in agriculture, and that's got to come down to something like 3 or 4% of the population engaged in agriculture over the next 12 to 15 years. Managing that shift is going to be the biggest challenge India faces in the next couple decades.
Yeah, Abhishek. All right, let me take this to Ratun. Ratun, you said that this is going to build a lot of confidence among the international business community when it comes to India's credit rating and the overall credit worthiness business environment. Specific to angel investing, specific to startups, you think this is going to really change the scene on the ground? There's going to be a rush of venture capital into the startup ecosystem, particularly in the backdrop of the fact that over the last 1 year we have seen some drying up of funds coming in the startup ecosystem?
Well, a couple of things. Firstly, I think certainly the fiscal deficit helps, as I've very clearly stated, and those are the headlines one is seeing in international media, number one. But most importantly, it is a continuity of policy, that I think will give a lot of credibility. Even I was in New York when the election results were, when the election results happened, and initially for the first couple of hours, I think there was a lot of concern that, whether things, whether policy would continue, whether there would be continuity in policy. But that very quickly dissipated, in terms of that. And I think if I were correct, the international community has been sitting waiting to see what this new budget of a more coalition government is going to be, in terms of whether it would be a more populist budget to kind of, pander to, the other factors also, in the political landscape today. But this clearly has been a very bold, a very good, as I very clearly said, budget with a view to the future. And for me, the headline has been the abolition of the angel tax. I think that is a very, very good thing, number one. Number two, for me, another great thing is the ELI, Employment Linked Initiative, that, the finance minister has announced. The PLI, the Productivity Linked Initiative, which added, according to the International Monetary Fund, added about 13% value to GDP in 2022. It has been celebrated as a very good step. I think the ELI, if executed properly, will be a great thing going forward. And the very first thing, if I've got my my facts correct, the internship in the 500 top companies that has been announced, and the internship allowance, the one-time, and all this linked to CSR. I think this is a very bold and innovative and a very thoughtful step, towards employment. Because for us to reach the level of growth that we require, I think this is employment generation and creation is one of the key things, and startups can play a very important role in that, and the abolition of angel tax, etc. is fabulous. The only thing is I concur with Arnab when I say that perhaps the 1,000 crore tokenism, in space tech that has been announced, I view this tokenism, 1,000 crores is $120 million. That is really nothing. But this is a great, but to a certain extent, it shows direction of government, and to that extent, I warmly welcome it.
Yeah, I think we also have with us Mahesh Gupta right now. Mahesh Gupta is the founder, chairman of Kent, one of the largest companies in the water business, water purification business, but he's also a self-made entrepreneur. He's really built it up from scratch. What's your takeaway, Mr. Gupta, from this budget you've seen? Something you would have wanted a little bit more of?
Yeah, I think everybody expects more, but the government has its own limitation. But whatever has come is a very welcome step in terms of manufacturing and in terms of real estate. 10 lakh crores being spent on real estate for poor people, that will boost consumption in the real estate and also bring employment in a big way. And the angel tax abolition is a very welcome step. The employment incentive for new employment is a welcome step. So many positive understanding sectors are going to have more facilities which will come up for them in terms of loans. So that's a welcome step, because MSME only can give you more employment. So I think this is employment oriented, this is the rural sector oriented, a lot of incentives given to the agriculture sector, with the available funds available to the government, and the little taxation benefits being given to the middle income group in terms of less income tax to them. Although little taxation of the long-term capital gain tax has come in. On the negative aspect, I would say share buyback tax has been increased in the hands of the beneficiaries. That something is a very negative aspect as far as the industries are concerned. The people who operate, I think that is a big, they will get into the 40% taxation rather than 23% taxation. Yeah. Which is bigger item in this time. So that's negative.
Yeah. Niranjan,
Kamal Bali is also joining us live. He's at CI. He's the MD of Volvo. Good afternoon, Mr. Bali. We've had a huge debate around employment figures, and that debate is ongoing year after year. And looking at, the plan, the blueprint that the government has put forward, they have 3 schemes for employment-linked incentives. They're talking about 1 month wage to new entrants in all formal sectors, 3 installments up to 15,000 rupees, expected to benefit 2 crore youth, right? They will reimburse EPFO contributions of employers, so employees and employers will benefit their job creation in manufacturing. The skilling program, skilling is a huge, and you're in the manufacturing sector. You know best about skilling, the importance of skilling and employment. So, what's your takeaway specifically on employment skilling and then overall on the budget?
Yeah, I think first of all, let me compliment the finance minister for a very thoughtful, growth-oriented, inclusive budget. It has touched and addressed every aspect of the economy and every aspect of society, whether it is agriculture, whether it is manufacturing, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is innovation. So all elements have been touched. I think on the cake is that they have kept the fiscal deficit at 4.9 and a glide path to 4.5 next year. So this to my mind is very good, and this will bring in macro stability, and at the same time it is a tremendous growth-oriented budget. But when it comes to especially to internships and employment generation, I think to my mind this is a very good step. This is something especially for the manufacturing sector and the automotive sector. This will do tremendous amount of good. If you look at Germany follows a similar system, and Germany is one of the leaders in automotive manufacturing. And I think by doing this, the youngsters get exposed to the latest technology, they get accustomed to ways of working in a manufacturing setup, and this will give a tremendous leg up both to manufacturing and to employment generation in my view. So overall, a very thoughtful budget, very pragmatic budget. Yeah.
Just one small point. Shamila, I'm just making a point here. Some of the global headlines read that Modi's budget spooks investors, but I think the markets are up. They spoke too early. Yeah.
So the markets are responding positively to the budget, and I would like to come over to Keshav. Keshav, overall, from this primary study and a quick read of the budget, clearly the government's mandate on manufacturing industry is very, very strong. What is your take on that, and what do you think is the long-term impact of the couple of announcements about schemes which has been made today?
I think that this is not the first budget for the government has put a thrust on the manufacturing sector. For the past 3-4 years, I think there has been a continued thrust, and I think that we have seen the results of the same. If you look at the manufacturing sector in India, it has grown through the course of the last 3 to 4 years. Of course, we still have a long way to go to catch up on economies like China, but I think the steps that they have taken, particularly with regards to employment and with regards to internships, are going to help substantially. Upskilling of the workforce was the need of the hour, and the government has focused on the same. So I think this is going to help the manufacturing sector overall substantially.
So the markets are already responding very positively to the budget, because there was a knee-jerk reaction which we saw initially, but so overall the mood is that the budget is going to benefit the economy, and the
overall sense is that it's continuity. It's sort of it's sort of the whole sense that is being given is that we are back to business as usual, so everybody can just chill, not worry about what happened in the elections, so that you're 20 seats, 30 seats down. I think the messaging is here, back to business. But does it work that way for investors, for the venture capitalists, for the private equity sector? Recently we saw there were issues of corporate governance in India, for example, and then there were questions of whether, funding is going to slow down, and we had Paytm, Baiju's, we've had some disasters, we've changing of valuations. So I'm very keen to know, from your perspective, because you head this body that really looks at venture capital, how do VCs, PEs, how are they going to look at the budget?
So thank you, Arnav. Thank you for having me on this show. So clearly, I think compliments and congratulations to our finance minister.
Yeah.
To us, like everybody talked about the angel tax, I think she's an angel to all of us at this moment. There is a lot of relief. Something which has been asked for a while, it's kind of getting through to daylight now. With this will result a lot of investments, as we can surely be assured. And I think just as the finance minister has mentioned about her focus about MSME, and if you break the word MSME, let's say for the first M is the MSME, S is for your skill, M is again for your middle class, and E is for the employment. So that keeping that in focus, an announcement on the angel tax, coupled with another announcement which is around the at least the partiality which was now removed in terms of the long-term capital gain. So at least it allows the domestic investor to kind of make a wise decision of listed and unlisted. So there's an opportunity which gets opened onto the unlisted space, and as you invest into the unlisted space, certainly there is employment. Every $1 million which is spent into this asset class by the VCPE and the alternate asset class actually generates $5.4 million of revenue and about 45 jobs. So certainly from the numbers which are there right now, you will see an influx of that coming in, because globally the capital is available. And I think this is what we are requested for: clarity, consistency and now the international as well as the domestic investors are going to see that. Coupled with that was another nice announcement, which is really need to find a little bit more detail, was another opportunity of putting across a fund structure by the VCC, the Variable Capital Company. So that needs to be a little bit well-read only for the IFSC, or it's also applicable outside and only if it's limited to the aircraft. But again, that's another positive move which we've seen, which is coming up. There was a mention about the space tech. Well, I think the Honorable Finance Minister had put together a message about investment into sunrise sector. We saw an early announcement on agri as well, right? So the NABARD being more powerful and making sure that opportunities which are in our in our farmer world and the startups are being deployed will be here. Certainly this 1,000 crores is small, but at least it's a start. And there is opening of the defense, which was already talked about by Honorable Prime Minister earlier on. So those are some of the hard ones. The softer ones, if you really saw, the messaging came around ease of doing business, which everybody wanted to hear about, right? Yeah. So now, and that also coupled with the fact that, look, we want to get more FDI into the country. Yeah. And FDI into the country, well, there were pools of capital which were Singapore and Mauritius. No, those were areas which were kind of restricted. Hopefully, I think, as we go in the detail.
Yeah. I'm thinking also, just a small comment from me before I go to Rajan Navani of Jet Synthesis, who is joining us from CII. Yeah. I think the markets are very mature today. Markets are not reacting to, for example, the tax rate for equity investments held for less than 1 year going up to 20% from 15%, for shares held for more than 12 months going up. LTCG, I think, goes up from 10% to 12.5%. Markets are not making a big deal of it. I like this. They're not having a meltdown. No. In that sense, I would say markets are not selfish. If LTCG is going up to 12.5%, then that investment goes to other categories. As you rightly use the word, there's some froth, then that investment goes somewhere else. As long as the economy is moving, I think the markets, those who are in the capital markets are beginning to say that, listen, I mean, we're all right. We accept there is some fraud, there's some overeating, but we are invested in India. The long term. India does well, we do well. That is, I think, so I'm also very, very happy that the markets did not, beyond the point, react negatively today. I know nothing about the markets, but when I saw that 1,000-point fall, I said, my God, I mean, this is the way you're going to react to FTT on futures and options by 0.02%. But now I feel really happy about it. On that happy note, I'm on air with Rajan Navani. And Rajan is heading Jet Synthesis. He's, by the way, the biggest player in the gaming industry. We don't know that aspect about Rajan. He wears many hats. So from your perspective, from the point of view of technology, from the point of view of future technologies, deep tech, etc., not enough, I guess, Rajan, in this budget, but that and overall picture from you.
Well, thanks, Arnab. Always pleasure to chat with you on such a subject that you also resonate so brilliantly with. As of today, I think this big budget has been about Gen Z. It's been about young people. It has been about the hope. It has been about, the technology cutting across everything. I mean, first time we heard a finance minister talk about technology, skilling, capital, regulatory, all in one statement. So I think what really excites me about this budget is the roadmap for the next 25 years. The 9 buckets, and if we can fill up these buckets correctly, I think all the words that you mentioned, deep tech and Gen AI and quantum and immersive technologies will all start playing out, over the next few years, provided we are able to create efficiency and productivity and resilience for agriculture, for example, all the way to, government reforms. So what I liked really about this budget was, of course, the fiscal prudence, keeping the fiscal deficit at 4.9 and more importantly, giving a direction that it will move to 4.5 over the next few years, and, keeping these 9 buckets. So if I really look at those aspects, truly excited. I know I was hearing in on this, you were mentioning that the public markets haven't acted too much on the 10 going to 12.5%, but I must tell you the private investors are super excited because there the LTCG has actually gone down significantly, as was being commented, from over 20-odd%, now to 12.5, which will really spur domestic investment, global investment into unlisted securities, private companies, which is really going to drive India, right? I mean, India is not about many large companies. If you compare to the China and US, right, we might have 2 or 3 in the top 100. Those countries would have 20, 30, but we'll have many smaller, medium-sized companies which will partner larger companies around the world and make India a super partner to the world rather than a superpower. So this journey to Viksit Bharat, if I look at the next 25 years, I think this budget has kind of put a foundational framework around which this can be populated, enhanced, and really keep youth and women and the poor who need to make the journey, the aspirational districts, all of that has been given, tremendous importance to. So,
all this is good, but there are
and look forward to
what about long-term investors? People who are long-term investors. If you're an investor, Mahesh Gupta, I'm taking you off your area. I'm just making you wear your business hat. So the Modi government says that we have given you a stable government, okay, over the last 5 to 10 years, and you benefited from a stable government. Is Mahesh Gupta on? You have invested in shares, you benefited gold, you benefited real estate, you benefited whatever asset class, net. As of today, you made more money, so be ready to pay more capital gains tax. So basic logic is if you gain more, you pay more. How is that going to be received by the business community, investors?
Well, I think 12.5 if you spend more than a year is still the lowest taxation we have an option to. Where else do you spend? You spend either in a long-term capital or you spend in the FDR. If you go to FDR, you get FDR. And whereas even at 12.5%, it is the lowest taxation one can get.
Yeah.
To my mind, investing is still remain positive. Suppose it would have gone to 20% and has not been speculated in the market.
Yes.
And then it would have hurt us too much.
It would have.
But the 12.5 is reasonable and one can easily digest it. I don't think there is any negative factor on this.
So Mahesh Gupta and Rajan, I'll let you both go. Thank you very much, for joining us this afternoon. And Abhishek is taking this forward with Salvatore and Ratun, who are continuing to be with us at Rajiv. Please, over to you.
All right, Salvatore, though you said that, because the budget speech was in Hindi and you couldn't keep pace, though of course you understand some Hindi and we have heard you speaking in Hindi. This issue of foreign direct investment in the country, India lags behind substantially, say for example, vis-a-vis China. But there was an innovative suggestion in the economic survey yesterday, and that was in English, you would have read, which suggested that why not get the Chinese to do manufacturing in India through the FDI route and hence shift the focus of manufacturing for the rest of the world also from China to India. Did you see some signs of those happening and the budget giving a fillip to it?
No, look, trying to attract foreign investment is like trying to push on a string. Investment follows opportunities. We have a lot of very solid academic research on this, that a growing economy attracts investment. Investment does not lead to a growing economy. So the focus on foreign investment, the focus on attracting investors, while it may sound good from a layperson's perspective, if you're there in a role to foster venture capital, of course you want to attract venture capitalists to your country. It's good sense to promote that, but in the larger macroeconomic reality, somebody's going to fund the economy if the economy is growing at 8%. Everyone wants to get into an economy growing at 8%. When you look at the statistics, it can be difficult to see where that money is coming from, because you see domestic investment is flat. Oh, it's not coming from domestic investors, or foreign investment is falling. If the economy is still growing, which means the money is coming from somewhere, it may be coming simply from retained earnings. It's very difficult to trace the sources of the growth through the macro level economic statistics. Yet we know when we look at the macro statistics that countries that have investment coming in do not later grow. Instead, what happens is that countries that grow later have investment flowing into them. So trying to attract Chinese investors to come to India is okay, there's nothing wrong with it. It's something that a government might sensibly do, but it's not the secret to India's growth. Growing the domestic economy is the secret to India's growth, and that's done through supply-side measures like having proper levels and appropriate levels of taxation, having favorable employment policies, deregulating the economy, making it easier to utilize land, making it easier to utilize labor, letting farmers sell their produce where they want instead of through restricted channels. Those are the routes to growth. The investment will follow if the growth comes.
Yeah, so actually, there is a reason why I am so focused on China, because with the kind of overcapacity of manufacturing they have,
any attempt we make at manufacturing is defeated by the fact that because of that overcapacity, they can still supply cheaper. So somewhere has to be found to this, right? So there is a conundrum. Do you take the duties route, like become a tariff king as Donald Trump says, and if that's not the way, what is the way out?
The problem is this focus on manufacturing. Most people think of Bangladesh as being a manufacturing center, and yet India's exports, percentage of GDP, are actually larger than Bangladesh's, and they're higher value added. Whereas Bangladesh is exporting cheap T-shirts and textiles, India is exporting refined petroleum and cut diamonds. There's no secret that just because China had lots of low-wage manufacturing and China grew does not indicate that at a macro level, if you look around the world at economic success stories, that success comes from cheap assembly work. That's simply not the route to economic growth. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing cheap assembly work, but it's much better if you do mechanized assembly work. And anyone who thinks that, well, India has to soak up a large number of workers just has to look at the employment figures. Employment in India has been rising rapidly, regardless of the fact that India has not become a major offshoring hub competing with China. China plus one does not for most companies mean India. Producing in India is for the Indian market. China plus one means Vietnam, it means Malaysia, it means potentially Ethiopia even. It generally doesn't mean India, and that's not a bad thing. The important thing is for India to raise productivity in India. Productivity is the key to all economic growth.
True.
Rajat, you can see
this one on the break and then we come back.
Okay.
During a quick break. Yeah, just a short commercial break and we come back. We've been live non-stop on our coverage of Budget 2024. Coming back with the live coverage. Continues on Republic.